Hello, and thank you for joining me. This is What I've Been Thinking with Marcus Cage, and I'm your host, Marcus Cage. Apologies first off, I'm a little bit nasally because my allergies are really flared up, but I decided it was important for me to drop this video before the actual votes start in South Carolina. Well, technically, they already have some votes have actually already started, but I figured I wanted to do a quick wrap up of some of the things, some of my takeaways from the debate, even though I considered the South Carolina debate quite a hot mess. Just a couple of my takeaways from it, and then I will give you guys, I guess, my rough guesses on the order of this race and how I think that it's going to come out on South Carolina. And then I'll give you my additional predictions and theories on what I think will happen with the race from there on. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Thank you for joining me. Remember, please like, please share. If you like to share, comment also. I do enjoy the feedback. Those of you who watch my videos know that I do try to communicate back and forth with you guys through the comments. So yes, I do enjoy the comments. Thank you again for joining me. Let's dive right in. One of the first things that I wanted to address as far as the South Carolina debate were the moderators. The framing of the questions, the lack of control over the debate itself, some of the bias questioning. I felt the moderators as a whole did a pretty terrible job. And that being said, ABC honestly probably gave one of the fairest interviews, which I saw before. If you go back a couple of months ago, I don't know what happened in this one. Also, the fact of literally one of the candidates on stage has their not their article, but their campaign ads running during the debate. I don't know how that's fair or how that's allowed, but somehow that was able to go on. I felt the moderators also didn't give adequate time for pushback. Also, there were plenty of times where they would literally let one person basically be attacked by person after person after person, and didn't allow the responses. Now, granted, in this way, I can come across as a little bit of a hypocrite because I admit the last debate, when Elizabeth Warren was going after Bloomberg and all of the candidates on the stage were attacking Bloomberg, I have to admit, it didn't bother me at all because I don't like Bloomberg. I feel he's a terrible candidate. I don't feel he is a Democrat at all, and I feel he's virtually not very much different than Trump. So for me, watching him get taken out was perfectly fine. And that's why you always have to stick up for the process to be done fairly every single time, even if you despise the person, because that's a learning lesson. For those of us which kind of let that float along because it was Bloomberg and we don't enjoy Bloomberg, and we all want to see his possible candidacy fail, we all kind of turned a blind eye to it. And so it allowed for them to be able to turn around and do that to Bernie Sanders, or it allows them to do it to any other candidate, which you might enjoy. The crowd. I thought the crowd was very, very strange, just like everybody else. So what did I do? I decided to get on the Twitter and start looking to see if anybody else was complaining about what I was seeing from the crowd. And one of the first tweets that I saw on there was from Ryan Grimm from The Intercept. And he also does collaborations with TYT and The Hill with Crystal and Sagar. His tweet stated that the minimum amount was 1750 up to I believe 3,500. Now, what was stated was that the campaigns all received equal amount of tickets, and the rest of the tickets were just sold off to different activists and different various people in the party who have influence. But if you notice, literally every time that Bloomberg said something, you got a lot of applause. Every time that Biden said something, you got a lot of applause. Anytime that those two were criticized, those people were also attacked by the crowd, i.e. Bernie Sanders repeatedly, Elizabeth Warren, a couple of times also. Steyer. I felt Steyer's kind of floated along so far throughout this process, and he's reasonably not got touched very much. But I feel that Joe Biden, if the attacks would have been so much directed towards Bernie and kind of all over the place, so much information put down within that, roughly hour and a half to 2 hour period, factoring out commercials. The amount of information was put there, most average citizens and voters are not going to pay attention to, are not going to memorize or decide if they want to go back and review the debate to see what they might have missed. But when Biden hit Steyer on his private prisons, and that's how he's made a good ton of his money off of for-profit prisons. That's something that most people have known for a long time, have been a very taboo thing. And if you decide that you think that maybe they're doing things proper, and you waited up until, only a handful of years later to get yourself away from that business and separate yourself, but you're perfectly fine with the money, and you didn't decide to donate those profits to, I guess, helping any of those people or improving the conditions in their life, I think that it took a real good dig at his credibility and just conscience on how he deals with things. Granted, I know he's not doing very well in the polls, but he did pump a lot of money into Nevada. It didn't benefit him, but I have heard a lot from canvassing on the ground that they are actually talking to real people that are being moved by Steyer. So I wouldn't completely count him out, at least in this contest, as far as South Carolina. Mayor Pete, I found him to be extremely annoying, and every time he talked, I just wanted to bang my head into a wall as fast as possible. It was hard, and so many times. The fake Obama cadence, which he does repeatedly, is pretty annoying. Also, the lack of pushback. I mean, you're in South Carolina, where we're talking about the highest black electorate so far, supposed to be deciding, or I guess making their voices known for the country. And when you have a mayor who's had issues with all the different black officials, from the fire chief to the police chief to other different workers within his local government, when you have all those kind of issues, when you have the shooting issues, when you have the encampments where homeless people are being torn down and things like that during the wintertime. I mean, there's just so much as far as race issues that wasn't brought up. I mean, he faked black support twice in South Carolina, and that wasn't addressed. But But I mean, I guess they feel maybe Pete's not going anywhere, so they didn't feel it was necessary. But I still felt it was quite a snub to not educate the audience on some of these things, or at least address them while you're sitting in front of, this electorate. I mean, a lot of people don't know that, but that building where they were located is literally across the street from a housing projects, which is predominantly black. But they didn't talk about some of those issues which deal with those people on a daily basis, the policing and issues which people like Mayor Pete had issues with in this city are very similar to those people right across the road. And for some of those people who might decide they want to vote for Mayor Pete, they might need to know some of these things. Amy. I won't spend too much time on Amy because outside of Amy possibly holding on to her lead, I'm not sure if she's still in the lead. Last I heard, it was tied. Occasionally, she peeks ahead, depending on which polling resource which you find. But outside of Minnesota, I don't really see a legitimate pathway for Amy. So unless she has some kind of upset and outperforms the poll or does anything like that, then I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. So I'll let that go. Warren continued her swing from the fences, haymakers everywhere to attack the front runners, I won't say front runners, because I feel like for South Carolina right now, Biden has to be treated like a front runner. So I feel like by her not touching Biden, it's kind of not attacking one of the front runners. Going after Bernie, I felt she kind of felt it was a futile approach at this late date, that she's not going to get Bernie supporters who are going to leave Bernie and go over to her. So I felt like she calculated that and decided to focus more of her energy and firepower on Bloomberg because she was effective and able to raise money at the time. The last debate. Only problem with that is everybody saw you light him up so much the last time. It's kind of hard to top that performance the second time, so it loses its appeal. The next time around. It kind of reminds me of one of my favorite movies, Usual Suspects. For those of you who have not seen that, I will give you 5 seconds to mute me, turn me down for a little while. I will give my little countdown. Okay. In the movie, the very first time that you see it, you don't know who's doing a lot of the talking, who the major villain and all this stuff's going to be. But when you get to the very end and that twist comes, and then you find out, oh, Kevin Spacey actually wasn't handicapped. Oh, wait a minute. He's actually the guy who they're looking for. He's not a verbal kid. He's actually Kaiser Soze. And that was this same situation, in my opinion. When you found out it was Kaiser Soze in the movie, that was mind-boggling. But if you turned around and watched it right after that, the very next day, you already know it's Kaiser Soze. You already know that he's a bad guy. You already know these things. So it took a lot of the sting off of it. I mean, sorry to go around the bend a little bit on that, but I guess that's how I saw that situation. Okay. On to my next candidate. I guess we'll go with Biden. I mean, Biden, because the establishment has put so much stock in Biden being the possible anti-Bernie candidate, it completely gave Biden a pass on his crime bill. Now, granted, people will hit Bernie back for that and say, well, Bernie, he voted for the crime bill. Well, here's a little distinction and nuance way that I look at it a little bit differently. Now, some can say, well, you're a Bernie supporter, and so you're not looking at this fairly. Um, I'll leave that for you to decide. But I don't feel that's what I'm doing in this case. I feel by Joe Biden writing the bill, by him crafting every bit of that the way he decided, and then everybody else being put to the decision, okay, either you vote for this crime bill that you may not agree with, and you flip a middle finger to women who have been assaulted or who are worrying about violence, because the Defense Against Women Act was all tied in under omnibus bill. So you could not vote for one without voting for the other. So for the people who have to vote for it, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. The reason why I see a difference and a nuance between Biden on this situation is Biden wrote this knowing that it wasn't entirely popular and knowing that he didn't have the support of most Democrats. And so what he did is he put the Violence Against Women Act in there to force Democrats to have to make that choice. To say, okay, well, you're not going to vote for my bill? Then, okay, you're going to vote against this one then. And so I feel like those who hit Bernie on that, if you go back to when Bernie actually cast his vote, he let out a scathing rebuke of this law that was being signed into law. And he named off all kind of things which he felt was wrong with it, why he felt there was a problem, and why he voted for it at the time. And it was the reason I told you. Another thing, I mean, I feel people who, I guess it's easy to not put things together when certain things were happening. But when you start putting like actual pop culture events that were going on along with the legislation, you have to start looking at a different picture. Those of you who remember the 90s, especially the early 90s, the O.J. Simpson trial was a huge, big deal at the time. At that time, after Nicole Brown Simpson had been murdered, the Defense Against Women, the Defense Against Women. I'm getting so tongue tied, so sorry. You guys know which act I'm trying to talk about. The act, which basically is defending women from domestic violence, and is basically had provisions in there to go after ex-spouses. And that was put in there specifically because of Nicole Brown Simpson after she was allegedly murdered by O.J. Simpson. For any male senator in that time period to go against that bill after what had just happened and the media buzz literally could have been a career ender. So I can't fault the people who had to make this decision. Either I'm going to vote for this bill or not vote for this bill. I fault the person who put them in that situation and the person who was the championing and making this negative bill to force other people into it. That I have much more of an issue with. Outside of that, as far as race issues, as far as Bernie Sanders, there's virtually none. But Joe Biden, you have that. You have his segregationist background. You have his comments, which he said about Obama at first, about how he's clean and he's well spoken. I mean, you can go down a list of and here's a thing which I feel is also overlooked. They focus so much on worrying about the African American vote, which that is important. But I've been to South Carolina. There are more than just black people. There are more than just white people. There was, when I was there was a heavy Indian American culture. I don't mean Native American. I mean India. So you had a huge culture there. You had, I saw groups and families of Pakistanis who live there, and all kind of other ethnic minority groups outside of the black community, which you should also be trying to speak to them and some of their issues. And Joe Biden has insulted and made nasty remarks and comments about those same people. I mean, the reason why I bring that up is because I heard a certain person comment about a Bernie Sanders surrogate supposedly using the N-word one time, and that's their main reason while they're a supporter of Mr. Stop and Frisk. Sorry to get off tangent, but back on my point is Biden was giving so much slack and leadway. I mean, lately in the news, I forgot about this. He literally just lied about being arrested with an elected official in South Africa while he was trying to meet with Nelson Mandela. Now, you say that, there's no check. You let Bernie Sanders say that, his career is over, not only this election. I felt like they didn't address some of his earlier comments, even in this race, about sending social workers into Black homes because Black parents, it's not that they don't want to raise their children, it's they don't know how. And so they need to have a social worker come in and teach Black people how to raise their kids because they don't know how to do that. I felt like and that's just like the tip of the iceberg. There were so many things which I felt were left out from the moderators as far as Joe Biden. I mean, it was, to me, I felt they should be a little bit embarrassed, but I know they never would be. Let's see. Oh yeah. After the debate, which was expected, you had Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina came out for Joe Biden. Though normally endorsements of especially establishment politicians normally don't make a big difference. And in an area like that, most of the Democrats there are establishment Democrats. So his voice does carry a lot of weight. And even if he's, I would say, kind of not always lived up to some of the expectations I have of him and expect of him in Congress, to that community, a lot of the work which he's done decades ago still carries a lot of weight. And a lot of people, when you've done, certain things, especially tied to the civil rights movement, they don't forget that, especially in that community. So I do think that is going to sway and help Biden do better. This one, I'm not entirely sure if it was an official endorsement, but I wanted to talk about it just because I felt, even if it was an official endorsement, I feel these words could have a small impact in certain ways. Reverend Al Sharpton, he actually came out and made some comments to the effect of, vote your conscience and your heart. If you have a candidate where you like their platform, then just go with that. Don't spend the time worrying about this socialism stuff and this Red Scare and this Cold War mentality and gulags and all that. Just ignore that stuff, because the same people who a lot of us looked up to from the 60s civil rights era and the 70s and other time periods were often labeled as communists or socialists. Some of our favorites, like Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, you had the Black Panthers. I mean, you could just keep going down the list of most of those. Medgar Evers. You had. You could just go through everybody who resisted the government, especially in the 60s, was automatically deemed as a socialist because we had the whole Cold War thing all brewing up and the whole Red Scare. I mean, the Cuban Missile Crisis and all those things were going on at the same time. And so with the mentality and the fear that was in the air, it's not hard to take some of those people who maybe they were in school at the time, back in the 50s, when they first start doing the get under your desk because you're worried about the nuclear attack coming back our way. I mean, late 50s. Or you were worried about it in the 60s, where that was still the fear. Well, what is Russia doing? And then into the 70s, and then up to my time period, I still remember in the 80s as a kid, all the stuff where it was the U.S. versus Russia. And I remember, the whole Berlin Wall and all that stuff coming down and everything. And a lot of people my age who saw that, okay, that's the end of it. So we're not even looking at Russia in that manner. But those people who are 10 years older than me, 15 years old, 20 years older than me, in their head, because of the fear that's been instilled in them from some of those things which happened previously, with the Cuban Missile Crisis, with, the assassinations that went on. There's a lot of fear that's still left in a lot of older Americans. So, I mean, Reverend Owl's push to get them to not buy into this fear mentality, because these people know that you have this fear and they play on it because they don't want you to have the candidate that you really want to go after. They want to keep you on that status quo, conventional route. Don't question anything. Just let us keep handling it. But hopefully you guys won't, fall to their, their fake promises and, their false reassurances that they know what to do and that they're going to have the best plan for us. Polls. So before I do my predictions here, the polls right before the debate kept getting closer and closer and closer. I've seen ones where Biden at one point, months ago, was at 30 points. We've watched his lead shave down to the lowest I saw was maybe I think it was 2 points. It was like 27-25. So they have the debate, which kind of was pretty muddled from most of the people I've spoken with, and from most of the media that I've consumed. It's kind of came across as muddled. And so with it coming across muddled, no candidate really stood out very much. And a lot of the polling showed that a lot of the people felt if they had to pick a winner, they said Bernie Sanders actually won. They didn't really see anybody else who jumped out at them for the most part from a lot of things which I read. Well, for the debate to not have very much fire, I won't say fire, it had plenty of fire in it, but for the debate to not be very decisive on a winner, it baffles me how the very next day you have the polls literally jump from, 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 point differences, which most of the polls have been showing for at least like the last week to maybe the last week and a half. From those polls to jump from those margins up to 10 points, 15 points, 20 points, 21 points. I feel like all I can say is I don't trust the polls. So keep that in mind when I make my predictions. I'm not going to give percentages for every single candidate which I list. I'll just kind of give some ballparks I'll give ballparks and I'll give who I think will actually reach the 15% threshold to actually be able to accrue delegates. The rest of them who I don't believe will, I won't be specific with their numbers. So without jabbing any more on that, who do I think will win? Well, I said that I don't trust the polls. I feel like they are intentionally inflating the polls, hoping that will sink into voters' minds or likely voters' minds, and that will influence those ones who might be leaning Biden's way, might see the polls and might decide, oh, wow, he really has it. Let's just go for Biden. And I also worry that part of that strategy is to just kind of tick away momentum from Sanders to hope that some of those voters will get discouraged and not come out. I don't think that's going to happen. I know typically, because in South Carolina, they typically don't poll black voters very well at all. Even likely black voters, they don't poll very well. The last time around, Hillary Clinton actually outperformed the polls pretty well because she got a much larger share of the older black vote came out for her than that was counted. In this case, I feel because that's what happened last time. A lot of people are going with that conventional wisdom that, well, that's the rules of things and that's how it's going to be. A lot of the videos, which I've done a little bit of research on some people who've been doing some canvassing. I won't say research per se. I enjoyed it also. Status Quo, Jordan Sheridan, which I've talked about him before. If you guys are not following Status Quo, you need to be. He's in independent media is literally the only one who's out there in the field talking to Trump voters, talking to Warren voters, talking to Pete voters, talking to Bernie voters, talking to everybody, having interview with candidates who are trying to, push for the same kind of policies that we're trying to push for. So, shameless plug for Status Quo. But what I was watching in some of his interviews is some of the canvassers on the ground. What they were saying kind of surprised me a little. It wasn't about which candidates they're interacting with. The biggest thing that surprised me is how many of these people were saying that they're running into voters that don't even know it's an election. That they don't know who a lot of these candidates even are. And then how some of those canvassers were able to get people who had never voted before, feel like everybody's bought out and corrupt, to actually get out and not only decide that they're going to vote, but to request literature to pass out to other people to get engaged. Full disclosure, they were Bernie supporters, Bernie canvassers. And what they were saying is, out of the hundreds of doors they knocked on, and I'm talking about going from, some of the roughest, poorest, like out, literally almost off the grid type locations. They were engaging voters that hadn't been talked to in God knows how long. Maybe some of them never been talked to. So when you look at the polls and you factor in, what they're saying, you also got to remember there's a lot of people which the ground game is out there reaching out to, which pollsters are definitely not polling. And also a lot of these new voters, they're not going to be able to calculate. They're not going to be able to calculate how many Republicans who think Bernie is the worst choice to put up are going to vote for him, hoping that helps Trump, or Republicans who just decide that they're going to vote for Bernie because they like him. So I feel like a lot of these numbers, it's still too early to be able to factor in. But with all that said, I predict that Bernie will actually upset Biden and win. Not by much. But I think Bernie will pull ahead with somewhere around, let's go with 27%, I think, for Bernie. Biden, because I feel this is his stronghold, I feel he is going to still get support. I feel he has the whole machine behind him really, really pushing. So it's going to benefit him to a degree. I feel the positive press coverage and all those things are going to work his way. So Biden, I say, 25% right behind him in second. Steyer, because he has been putting in so much money and so much work, I feel it's going to be effective, especially to voters who aren't very, very engaged and who do not do diligence when going to research these candidates and going back through the different things they're saying or different policies that they're proposing. So I predict Steyer will also get above viability. I think Steyer will poll lower than he's been polling, because he's been polling roughly around, the low 20s. I think Steyer will come out somewhere around 16, 17%. Warren. Warren, I think it's a day late, and a dollar short. I really feel all the attempts which Warren has done, even back to Nevada, everything has just been too late. Though her super PAC has just dropped $9 million in a handful of cities to try to hurry up and get back in this, even though she still has on her website that she swore off super PACs. Warren is running $9 million worth of ads for her through a super PAC. But I don't think it's going to help. I see Warren coming somewhere around, let's see, about 8%, 8 or 9%. I don't even see her hitting double digits. All right, this will be lightning round just for fun. Tulsi. I think Tulsi will actually place in, what would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tulsi will be the 5th place. I think Tulsi will pull in somewhere around 5 or 6%. Pete, I see Pete somewhere around. Actually, that's wrong. Pete will probably be somewhere around 7, 8%, something like that. So he might be above Tulsi. Maybe not. Tulsi, like I said, 4, 5, 6%, somewhere around there. And I think Amy is going to bring up the rear and be embarrassing almost. I predict Amy Klobuchar to get somewhere around 3%, 2%, 3%. That wraps up my South Carolina, I guess, wrap up of the debate, my thoughts on it, my poll, my prediction polls. Oh yeah, I wanted to throw this in real quick, and I will talk about this again. I just started a second show. That show will be on, I'm not sure exactly when we'll put it on, but as of right now, we're doing our filmings on Sundays. It'll be myself and Nial Elkim. The name of our show is the AnNialation Cage. That show, for those of you who enjoy to get a little bit longer take on some of our different conversations, you want to see it a little bit more freestyle, where we throw in various different topics. In this recent episode, we literally went from talking about different things with Elizabeth Warren and her campaign, to jumping over to Bruce Lee versus Mike Tyson, to a couple of different other issues. So if you are interested in hearing a longer conversation that me and Niall will have on some of the different topics that are going on, please tune in. Sorry, getting so tongue tied. Please tune in and catch our show, once a week, and throw in any kind of comments that you would like for us to talk about. We'll try to bring those up on the show. Hopefully, I'm working on doing a surprise video, something that if I'm able to get it to everything to work out perfectly, I will be bringing you guys a special treat. But I don't know yet for certain, so I will know once I know for a fact. I will give you guys a short video letting you guys know that yes, I was able to do it. And then once I get everything cut and edited on the video, which I will be working on, I will post it. Other videos to expect coming up. I know I've been a little bit delayed on my times, but my third video on the president's video will be coming soon. I had to do a little bit of editing because I was a little kind and giving a little bit more benefit of the doubt to some people, which probably shouldn't get it. So I wanted to go back and do one which I would feel 100% confident behind. My other video. There's so much information about Black History Month, and I don't only like to talk about Black history during Black History Month. I like to talk about it all the time. I feel all history is important, and especially, Black history, because a lot of it's not as known, and I feel it should be more known. I'm going to be doing it'll be very, very light on commentary, but I will try to give some slides of some of the, influential Black leaders, Black musicians, inventors, all kind of historical icons that I feel more people should know more about, or at least know about in the first place. So in that video, keep an eye out for it. It won't be a lot of me running off at the mouth. It will be more of slides and just giving you factual information, people that you guys can remember and maybe look into that you guys might want to learn more about. With that said, hopefully, I will be definitely releasing a video about what happens in South Carolina, of course. So I definitely look forward to that. I honestly think that even if Bernie does not win, I think that this race is still very much his. So any of you Bernie supporters who might get a little bit worried, might get a little bit stressed out, just keep in mind delegate math. With that said, hope you guys all have a good one. Any of you guys who are out there in the South Carolina area or Super Tuesday states, please make sure you have everything in order, your rides to the polls or whatever you need to do, your stamps, to make sure to help get Bernie every vote that he needs to get these wins. With that said, I will leave it here. Hope you guys enjoy. Catch you again on the next video. With that said, all right, you guys have a good one. Thank you.